guys, and welcome back to Live Laugh Birds, where we live and laugh with birds. So I get questions all the time about how to convince your parents to get a bird, or I want a bird so bad but my parents don't, or even things just like how do you live with a bird when you have to leave and go to school. So yes, I am in high school. I do go to school normally. Obviously it's Corona time, so there's no going to school, but on a normal day, I would be going to school. If you guys don't know, I do own 5 parrots. This is Kermit, my green cheek conure. I also own a cockatiel and 3 budgies who are back there. You guys can see Violet, my newest one, and Pearl. I got my first bird, who was Bluebell, when I was 9 years old. Is living with my 5 birds and going to school a challenge? Yes, it is. But I would never change a thing because birds are just so amazing. I love them so much, but you shouldn't just get a bird because you want one. Not everyone is fit for a bird. Some of you guys probably clicked on this video because you want me to tell you how to convince your parents to get you a bird. And I'm here to tell you that if you have to convince your parents, then your parents probably don't want a bird. And that can be a problem for you and for the bird. Even if it's technically your bird, your parents are responsible for your bird because they're the ones taking their money and paying for the bird's needs. You guys might be thinking like, oh, a budgie is only like $20 at PetSmart. I can just save up my money and purchase a bird myself. Are you gonna be able to afford a proper size flight cage, the perches, the toys? Or are you just gonna go with whatever the pet store recommends, which is gonna be the cheapest cage possible, and keep the perches that come with the cage, which are going to be dowel perches, and not buy toys? Then once you do some research, you learn that your bird needs a bigger cage, and they need enrichment, they need toys, they need natural wood perches, and your bird is still stuck in that small cage because your parents refuse to buy a new cage and toys like a bird needs. They're gonna be like, the bird's fine in there, the bird's always been in there, there's no point to buying a new cage. And it's just a really sad situation because then you know what your bird needs, but your parents are not willing to spend the money to get them what they need. So make sure that you start off right. Do your research and learn that birds are expensive. Let's say you're able to save the money and get this cage. There are long-term costs that your parents have to pay because you have to keep buying toys, you have to keep buying food, but most importantly, you're not gonna be able to pay the vet bills yourself. Birds need avian vet care, which is really expensive, and your parents are gonna be the ones who pay that. And if your parents don't care enough, they're not going to spend the money because they didn't want the bird in the first place. And I just can't tell you how heartbreaking it is when your bird gets sick suddenly and you didn't expect it, and your bird needs to go to the vet immediately because by the time they're showing those symptoms, they're already very sick. But then your parents refuse to take your bird to the vet and your bird doesn't make it. Apart from just the cost, your parents, they have to be animal lovers in general in order to put up with some of the things that birds just do naturally no matter what. Yes, they're messy, they're noisy, and yes, you're gonna have to clean up poop off the floor because you can potty train a bird, but you can't prevent a bird from pooping on the floor sometimes. They're going to have accidents no matter what. You're gonna have to sweep a lot, and you know, if your parents are clean freaks, they're just probably not gonna be too happy with that. And yes, my mom does help me clean the bird room. You know, she'll work on the floor while I do the cages. And then if you live with your parents and your parents don't want to clean up the mess everywhere and they don't want to deal with bird poop, then it leads to a bird that never leaves the cage because they don't want it flying around and pooping in the house, or a bird with clipped wings so they just kind of sit in one spot, and that's just not fair to the bird. And then of course birds are noisy, that can bother some people. If you are a child or a teenager and you want a bird, then your parents have to be supportive because they're gonna be paying for the bird, they're gonna be dealing with the bird, they're gonna be living with the bird. So if you are the one finding yourself having to convince your parents to let you get a bird, that's not gonna work out most of the time. My mom, she grew up, she loves animals, she always had lots of pets. My dad also loves nature and animals, so my parents, they do really support me with my birds, and so it's really worked out for me. So shout out to them. I'd like to give them a little recognition in this video. The next thing I'd like to talk about when it comes to owning parrots at a young age is gonna be future plans. What about going to college? What's gonna happen to your bird? You're gonna move away. what is going to happen once you have these life changes. Your bird is going to be going through these life changes with you, and you're going to need an accommodation for your bird. Hopefully you can take your bird wherever you're going, but it's not always the case, and sometimes the bird ends up with your parents. If you didn't already know, parrots live a really long time, even the smaller ones. Budgies can live 10 to 15 years with proper care. Lovebirds about 15 years, cockatiels and conures 20 plus years, and the bigger parrots anywhere from 50 to 80 years. Another thing that I'd really like to talk about, and this doesn't just apply to owning a bird as a kid, and that is how much time you have. Parrots are extremely intelligent and social creatures, and they need to interact with you, and they need to be let out of their cage for hours every single day. Can you commit to that? Or do you have a busy schedule that prevents you from being able to do that? There is no minimum specific amount of time that a certain bird needs to be outside their cage every day, but just know that you need to spend as much time with your birds as you can. The thing is, if you have to go to school, then you have to go to school. I go to school. I wish that I had more time with my birds on school days, but it is what it is, and you have to make it work by spending all of your time when you're not at school with your birds. If you go to school, you're away for about 7 hours, which is also similar to someone who works full time, and you can make it work, but you have to be very diligent about spending all the time that you do have at home with your birds. And you have to have a large cage with lots of toys and enrichment to keep your bird busy while you're gone. It really does depend on your individual lifestyle, because if you go to school but you also have lots of sports, lots of extracurricular activities, you like to go out and do stuff, or you have a very busy social life and you like to go out with friends on weekdays, then a bird is not going to be right for you. A bird definitely limits the things that you can do as a teen. You know, I can't really go out and try lots of new things. I can't join lots of new activities. Not that I ever want to, because I am a bird person for life and I am dedicated to my birds. But that's pretty much what you have to be as well, because you have to keep the bird in mind no matter what. You can't just start doing something that'll take up all of your time after school, because then your bird is going to be left in the cage all the time. When you're not at school, the first thing you do is you go and take the bird out, you spend time with them, you include them when you eat, you include them when you're doing your homework because you have them on your shoulder. You just have them out with you as much as possible, and then you can make it work. But that can only work if you spend a lot of time at home and you don't have a busy schedule outside of school. The next thing I'd like to talk about is going to be how much patience you have, and generally how much understanding and empathy you have for these creatures, because their behavior is not always like ours, and you're gonna have to train your bird and you're gonna have to work through things with your bird, and it can be challenging. But you really have to be very patient, because you can't rush things when you have a bird. A lot of times if a bird is flying away or biting, kids are gonna be like, well, my bird hates me, so then they just end up leaving the bird in the cage all the time, and that is just so unacceptable. You have to be very patient and work through these things and understand a bird's body language, because their behavior is not like ours. The bird is flying away and biting, not because they hate you, but because they view you as a threat or a predator, because in the wild they are prey animals. Parrots are going to bite, and it doesn't mean they hate you. They could be biting because they're cage territorial and you stuck your hand into their space. They can be biting you because you touched something that they think is theirs for some reason. They can be biting you because they're hormonal. They can be biting you because they view someone in the house as a mate and you are intruding by trying to take them off of that person. They could be biting you because they're clipped and they're scared, but they can't fly away, so the only thing that they have left is biting. They could be biting just because they don't want to go on you at that time. There are so many different reasons why parrots bite. You simply have to understand that the birds are going to do these things, and you can't just give up and say that the bird hates you, because that'll end up in a bird that is stuck in a cage. And another thing about younger kids is that they tend to be very hyper, and that can easily scare the bird. So you have to move really slowly around birds, and you have to make sure the bird is comfortable. Another thing that I've been asked a lot is, what's the best starter bird or beginner bird for children if you've never owned a bird before? The short answer is, birds in general are not beginner pets. So birds are just complicated all around, and there's not like one specific species that's like great for beginners. It's more about finding the species that's right for you. Another thing that happens a lot with kids is that they pick a bird just based on the color. And the thing is, I know it's appealing, and I was one of those kids. I picked Bluebell because I really wanted a blue budgie, but you really want to pick a bird based on the personality and find one that you connect with. It's just the most amazing feeling when a bird chooses you. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is, why are you getting a bird? A lot of kids tend to lose interest in birds, and you have to make sure that you really are passionate about birds and learning about them and learning about their behavior and just love animals in general. It's not just a cool pet to show off to your friends or a pretty decoration in your house. It's a serious commitment and a long-term commitment. You've got to be pretty crazy to put up with these guys, right? There is a bird in my hair. This is a crazy bird, right? He likes my hair. I hope you guys learned from this video. Guys, keep researching, keep educating yourself, and then maybe one day you'll end up like this, but maybe this video convinced you out of getting a bird, which I would be very happy if it did. So don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video.